Shut up, compressor. Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, Matt here with Duke's Models, and welcome to episode 13 of the Tamiya F-4B Phantom build. Now, in episode 12, the focus was on basically getting the underside squared away, including all of the weathering and grime and streaking and whatnot, and ultimately leading into the installation of the ordnance and the gear doors and all that shit that I was just ready to have on and done and cooked. So, the Phantom is in pretty good place at the moment. I'm not going to turn it over because the tail would fall out, but you can see back here on the exhaust, all the shit going on, and all the fun ordnance and whatnot hanging out underneath. Something that has plagued me the entire time that I've been working on this is the flapperons constantly working their way loose and falling out. This has happened so many times that I've quite literally lost count. And I think every build has some little element like this that's just, after a while, it just kind of gets funny, Like, there's a comedy to it. And this time it's been these flapperons. So I'm going to go ahead, and before I get too much further into this, I'm just going to glue them in place. Because, we're at the point where, fuck it, they need to be where they need to be. So Ammo Ultra Glue. I love this shit. It's great. If you need a PVA glue that will hold things nicely, this stuff is awesome. Unlike a lot of other PVAs that I've tried, it's not super spongy when it dries. It's not gonna flex itself into uselessness. But it also has a good amount of hold. So, gotta love that Tamiya fit. This gives me flashbacks to when I was working on my Zukimura F-4D. And this was before they'd kind of fixed the flapperon problem that they have, where the instructions say that you could mount them deflected like this, right? And you really couldn't, because the leading edge, the edge facing the wing, was just a square. And so if you wanted them deflected, well, oh shit, you've got just this angle kind of hanging out, doing whatever. And so I had to literally scratch build a rounded forward portion of these, and God, it sucked. Okay, so now that the flapperons are installed, where do we go from here? Well, essentially, I want to focus this episode on weathering the upper surfaces. The wings, the fuselage, etc. And that's going to focus in a few key areas, because it's not like the whole jet is filthy, right? There will be grime kind of scattered about it. But for the most part, looking at these Marine Phantoms at Da Nang, the weathering is kind of focused in certain areas. So yeah, the wings will be grimy, but they will be grimier along the wing root areas, on the on the walkway, grimier up here. On a lot of F4s, there was another walkway up here. There wasn't on these VMFA 323s, F4Bs, at least the ones that I've looked at in reference photos. Nothing up here. So I'm gonna kind of cheat and still put a bit of grime up here and kind of like hint at walkways. Maybe they were, worn away. Maybe they're painted over, whatever. It just makes sense in my head, and it's, a fun visual thing to do. Other than those areas, there's going to be, sort of like up the side here on the fuselage by the wing root, and then there's going to be stuff around the intakes and the crew boarding area and the refueling probe, basically this sort of like nose area. Those are going to be my main points of focus, with a little bit of extra fun, maybe around the flapperon hinges, maybe around the wing fold hinges, just, nothing significant. Just, a little bit of a hint of stuff. And to show you what I'm talking about, let me flip this fucker around. Putting the putting the ordnance on this caused problems, because now it's hard to move. But I just want to get them on so bad, because they're so fun. So, over here you can kind of see what I am talking about. You know, in here we've got this sort of like hinted walkway grime from crew boots and things like that. I mean, literally the back seater would climb up onto the wing, climb up onto the lower level of the fuselage, and literally walk along it and get in from standing on top of the intake. So, you know, there is foot traffic up here all the time. There's foot traffic on the walkway. There's going to be foot traffic kind of just scattered about here, plus just shit getting on the wing. They were operating out of Vietnam, which, you know, had wonderful climate for flying. Lots of humidity, no dust, no water of any kind to speak of, right? So they got dirty, and you know, I kind of want that reflected in here, just based on what I've seen with the weathering. We will get into some fun up here around the nose as well. Curiously, back here, by the engines, by the tail, things generally seem to be more chill. You don't see a lot of massive amounts of stuff here, except for, you know, on the smoky engines, the exhaust on the heat shielding, but we've already dealt with that. So basically, you know, I would say on a lot of Phantoms, you know, like F-4Cs and whatnot, Air Force ones, they would have basically this line back here, like a red line, I guess denoting the hot part of the engine, something like that. And that is kind of how I'm thinking about the weathering. The weathering will be in front of that. So there will be some light stuff back here just for, you know, for fun. But for the most part, I'm going to be focused forward of that. So what I've been doing so far, basically we've got kind of a similar approach, but a bit more restrained than we did on the underside. So got, you know, our good friend here, Mr. Weathering Color, multi-gray. Our other good friend, Mr. Weathering Thinner. Get ourselves a brush. Find the Deerfoot stippler before I start going crazy. Deerfoot stippler right here. And let's zoom our asses in. Right. Oh, and these are fun. These are 3D printed boots. So I'm going to get to figure out how to do boot prints. The thing that worries me about these is they're fairly stiff. And, you know, the boot prints that they produce are interesting, especially on hard plastic. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so as per usual practice, just kind of dabbing this stuff around, getting some thinner, dabbing it around more, not avoiding the walkway areas at all. I will say, while I'm not avoiding the walkways, I kind of want to treat them as their own separate thing to a degree. So I'm not going to try to weather them just with Mr. Weathering Colors. That would be crazy. Alright, now comes the fun part. Good thing the landing gear on this thing is tough, because otherwise this would be just Wince City. I have to remember this when I'm working on my Wild Weasel soon. It's not as tough. And we're continuing with the Mr. Weathering Colors, moving from the multi-gray to multi-black. Just getting some additional contrasty goodness going here. Using the Mr. Weathering Thinner to break it up as necessary. So once we have that doing like that, again, It's time for the stippling brush to come in and do its thing. This is where I wish I hadn't done the struts yet, but you know, we'll get by. Okay, that's not too bad. And then we've got down here on the walkway. I don't think I want to thin that really. Just kind of move some shit around. We'll also add something that I missed as I was going through this until just now is I forgot to install this little antenna base here, which at least on the 323 birds was not really an antenna, so I had to install it, trim it off, and kind of sand it a little bit. So we're going to go back in here and touch that up in a bit, but yeah, it's not so bad. But I think we need to bring in a few heavy hitters in terms of deeper colors. So we're going to bring some Starship base sludge. Where's the Starship filth at? There it is. Yeah, Starship filth. Gonna drop a little bit of goodness right in there. I think I need to switch over to oils. There's a limit to what these oil brushers can do in terms of blending. Okay, so in the middle of all this, I've realized that there is going to be a need to do a little bit of touch-up spraying here and there. Specifically right up here where we had to add the antenna, and right here where I glued in the middle canopy bit. I don't know the technical term for it. So I've added some light gold gray into the 771. And we're just going to do a little light touch up there. I might add it just a little bit. Just in a few other places, just for fun, you know? And right up here, I'm going to need a little bit of extra help, I think. I don't trust myself to get all of that cleanly. This little piece of sanding sponge here just to kind of protect on overspray and whatnot. There we go. That's really boring. Fuck. This is the part that kills me on F4s, man. This little mid canopy bit. Because it always has to go in late and it just... It's a pain in everyone's ass. Okay, that's not too bad. While we're on the side, I've got this little light that needs installing, so birds and stones and all that shit, right? So a little bit of Ammo Ultra Glue. We do not need much. So there's that. Okay, well, we were interrupted by something in the attic, and I'm worried that the Ultra Glue may have dried now. We'll find out. Surely it's more forgiving than that, right? This is just the kit clear part painted with Tamiya Clear Red. Nothing fancy there. Okay, now we can turn around and spray the other side. Okay, since I'm following this path of just doing shit out of order and backwards, I've gone ahead and decided to install the canopies. The aft canopy fits just fine. I went ahead and glued it to the little bulkhead piece that like slips in, and I attached the actuator, like the lifting arm. Everything's hunky-dory. The one up front that has to attach to this mid piece attaches to like a little tiny curved section with two little pips in it. Needs a little bit more support. So I've currently got an airbrush needle resting on two Tamiya extra thin quick setting bottles, basically just to let the ultra glue set up. And then we'll find out how good the ultra glue is at resisting shearing forces over time. In my experience in the past, it's been pretty good, but that's not the weight of a canopy that we're talking about. But I'm going to let this dry probably overnight before I really come in and attempt to do anything else with it. So we're getting very close to the end at this point. I still have a little bit of extra weathering I want to do, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is in a happy place. So fantastic. I'm thinking, I was planning on having a whole nother video after this for sort of the final wrap-up finishing of shit. But I think we're pretty much just going to carry this one through on this, and this will be the wrap-up. And there may be one final sort of post-mortem retrospective type of piece, looking back at the build as a whole. But for the most part, we're very, very much in the home stretch here. Okay, so as we barreled down the home stretch, I'm working on having some fun with boot prints using these little 3D printed guys. And the problem with 3D printed guys is they have pretty much no flex, and boot soles have flex. So what we're doing is putting some Starship grime down on the back of a used ink cup. Just basically getting some paint on the boot. And then we're just coming in and just putting some boot prints down. I chose the streaking Starship grime, whatever, because it's a little bit lighter than the other oils I've been working with. So hopefully that'll make it a bit more subtle. We'll see. Does look pretty good. We got to be sure to put the left foot in here too, though. Otherwise, it's just going to be a whole bunch of righties, and that'll look fucking weird, right? That's annoying. Getting a little bit greedy on that one. I think these on the wings look okay, though. All right. I'm going to try slewing this around to the other side, because people don't just walk on port wing, do they? I think maybe instead of these boot prints like this, it might make more sense to have like outlines and just kind of dab shit, into the outlines. Anyway, that's fun. Back to some extra oils, because gotta make this a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I've got some ABT 502 Starship Filth. I'm going to try to go as gentle as I can on this, while still kind of making an impact, right? So, airbrush needle. So a tiny, tiny little bit. Right along the wing root there. A bit of Mr. Weathering color thinner. Kind of helps that a little bit. I think I want to carry this up. Just a little bit right there. Just kind of up some of these rivet and panel lines. So we blend that, and then we keep this sort of lower barrier as a bit of like a wet, nasty kind of thing, right? That looks pretty good and grody. The one thing I hate about oils is how quickly a brush goes from useful to just too full of shit to really be useful to needing intense clean. Alright, making that nice and nasty. Yeah, that'll work. So there's a quote that has been attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, and honestly probably misattributed, but what the hell. Leonardo da Vinci is a fun character to attribute things to. But it goes, a work of art is never finished, merely abandoned. And I've had that quote, speaking of abandoned, fucking hell, every time I get going, the compressor has to have its say. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about this quote and how it pertains to modeling and how it pertains to the whole idea of, you know, the extra 20% that you can go takes 80% more effort, generally speaking. That sort of like pursuit of perfection and where we just decide to call it a day when it comes to modeling, or in my parlance, when the fucks run out. And that's all coming to a head right now with the Tamiya F-4B Phantom because my fucks have run out. This is a gorgeous kit, but as I've been saying all along, the F-4B is probably my least favorite of the Phantom variants. The high-vis scheme just doesn't resonate with me the way that the Camo SEA schemes do, or the Euro 1, or the Hill scheme, or the Greeks, you know, the Greek Aegean Ghost scheme. Like, there are other things on Phantoms I prefer to this. And so because of that, it's always been hard for me to get super, super interested in these early Marine and Navy Phantoms. But it's a fucking Tamiya kit, and it goes together exceptionally well. And that has pretty much been enough to carry it as far as it has come. But I'm reaching that point where I'm running out of fucks and where I want to honestly work on other things. It's just, you know, jet kits are a lot, and I'm still grappling with that pretty much every day. So, in the spirit of that, the good old F4B here, Sneck, the VMFA 323 bird, is being abandoned because it is finished at this point. I've kind of taken it as far as I think my sanity can allow, and there are a ton of things that I would love to come in here and improve upon, and we'll walk through those in a minute. But for all intents and purposes, this is where it stands. Alright, so I'm going to remove the tail real fast, just so I can flip this fucker over and we can look at the bottom. And I want to talk through sort of the things that I think went well and the things that I think didn't go well. It should go without saying, first of all, what went well? The kit. The kit is fucking amazing. Like, I didn't think Tamiya could top their F-14, and oh fuck, did they ever with the F-4B. This is an amazing kit. It solves a lot of really tricky, annoying Phantom problems. The wing tips are a good one. The way that the canopy is installed is another one. The way the cockpit goes together, the way the intakes, everything just fits. The tail, the heat shield, like all of it. There is nothing in here that I think is bad, and that is pretty awesome because generally I can find something to hate in pretty much any kit. But I'm going to flip this over and hope nothing falls out or falls off or causes undue distress. Just so we can look at what's going on down here. This is terrifying. So here we have the underside, right? Everything looks nice and good. The centerline tank is much cleaner than everything else, as I have alluded to, just for, you know, something different, and because honestly I didn't feel like weathering it because the fucks ran out. Things I am happy about, I think the ordnance came out quite good. I think the multiple ejector racks and the triple ejector racks and the rockets, and the bombs, all pretty awesome. I think the heat shield and the sootiness all came out nice. I think the engine exhausts came out fantastic. You know, I would love to be able to pull those off on every Phantom I do. Let's swing this over before I die of anxiety. So yeah, overall, you know, the underside I think pretty strong, except for feeling like I had to pull the ripcord on the weathering just because I was getting super antsy, and you know that's about it. That and just kind of running out of gas on the pun intended, I suppose, on the centerline tank. Just big giant white tanks are boring, and I had a hard time finding really good photos of weathering on them, and a lot of them seemed really clean compared to other things on the Phantoms. So fuck it, there we go. On the rest of it, things I think went well. I think the interior, the cockpit worked out quite nicely. I think I'm pretty proud of myself for getting pilots into an aircraft. Maybe one day I'll do one in flight. I think the Tiger scheme on the pilots' uniforms, flight suits worked out pretty well. The Quinta cockpit stuff, honestly, I probably wouldn't use them again at this point. I think it worked out nicely, but you know, just at least personally for me, the whole Russian connection is just too much to look past at the moment. I mean, maybe down the road, but right now, nope. Fortunately, I think there are some other sets from some other players that are not in quite as troublesome geographies, so there's that. What else do I think went well? I think overall the decals and the stencils went pretty well. I think where they worked and where they landed, the Edward decals were amazing. The ability you could just like put them down, peel the carrier film away, wonderful. I was a bit surprised that some of the furball decals had very, very, very thick elements to them. Some of like the black stencils and whatnot. Other ones were great. You know, the national insignias went down wonderfully. The AOA stencils also fantastic. Like there's a lot. Just I think there are probably more really good, amazing decal sets for 148th F4s than there are probably any other aircraft in existence, maybe 109s. So overall, very happy with that. Very happy with the way the MRP and the SMS and the guns and all the various paints behaved. I don't think I really ran into anything too disconcerting about any of those. Happy about my roll of the dice with chipping up the radome. I think I could have done it better, but overall went nicely. Things I am less than happy about, the boot prints. I need to figure out a way to print those 3D printed boot prints in a more flexible resin. I need to add some Soraya Tenacious to it or something to have something a bit more pliable, because these things are rock hard, and that makes it really tough to get that good texture down there. So something a bit more rubbery next time I think would be a huge win there. And then I could just get like a stamp pad or something to use that. What else did not go so hot? I'd have to say, and this is just it's a problem with Phantoms in general. It's a problem with the way the kits are designed, and there's really no way around it. This centerpiece here, that there's a visible line between the fuselage and it, and that's not really there on the real things. If you look at them, that's like a blended surface. It's really hard to blend after you've install it, though, just because there's so much shit right there around it, and nobody really ever does, it seems. Maybe, I'll get a bug up my ass one time and do that, but again, ran out of fucks. And one of the reasons that I started running out of fucks was when I took the masking off of the windscreen. The center element here has all kinds of shit on it, and I think it's on the inside, but I've tried getting to it, and it's just something got in there. And honestly, my masking job there isn't as tight as I think it could have been. Just, yeah, it was, that was one of those deflationary things. You take it off, you're like, oh fuck. And fixing it is way more of a hassle than it's potentially worth. Another one was when I removed the masking from the canopies themselves. I had used an old bottle of, I think I even threw it out. I don't have it around anymore. But it was an old bottle of Guns, Mr. Masking, Sol, Neo, whatever, the blue shit, right? And it just, I don't know what happened. It went bad, but it just clung to this shit. It's like, reminded me of that old like Nickelodeon GAC stuff. It just like stuck and it would not come up. And the only way I got it to come up was actually to put some new ABT 502 masking fluid on top of it, let that shit dry, and then just kind of chisel it up slowly, and then, repeated cleanings and things like that. It took a lot of elbow grease to get it, to get it clear, and it honestly, at the end of the day, wasn't all that great. There's still, if you look really closely, some hints of less than cleanliness on the canopies, and that just, again, small little thing that just kind of sticks that knife in a twist. What else have I got? I'm not super happy with the way that I did the stabilators. I think they could have been done better. Just, yeah, I mean, blending in the canopies with the rest of the weathering could have been more effective. Like, there's a lot of little coulda, woulda, shoulda type stuff with this, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I started this a year and a half ago, and it's taken that long to get it to the finish line. And so with that, there are going to be regrets, and there's going to be a certain level of, fuck it, I need to be done, and I need to move on to something fresh. So, and I know there are some modelers who can take like 5 years to build something. That's not me. I mean, I get to this point, and it's like, I took way too long with this, and somewhere I lost the thread. And when that happens, it's just, shit can go sideways. So overall, I still am very happy with the build. I think it's, pretty effective paint job. I think the weathering is pretty cool. I think the pilot's awesome. I think the ejection seats came out nice. There's a lot of stuff here that I'm a big fan of. It's just, we're our harshest critics, and I can look at this all day long and see all kinds of flaws in all kinds of places where I just, either chickened out or just got lazy and didn't put in the work because I wasn't willing to put in the work. And that gets us to the point where I'm happy with it, but I'm also unhappy with it because I know it could have been so much more. But I also know that that extra 20% would have been 80% more effort. So, is what it is. It's a fucking hobby. So anyway, with that, that is the Tamiya F-4B Phantom build. I hope that you enjoyed it. And I want to stop and take a moment to thank Rudy and Daniela at Lionheart Hobby for tossing this kit my way. I know the intent was to have something built and up a lot faster than a year and a half later. Fortunately, I got that test build up and out the door pretty quickly, but the actual build of the thing itself took quite a bit longer. But here it is, year and a half later, finally crossing the finish line. So thank you all for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for what's next. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I know that the Zukimura F4G Wild Weasel is swirling around. It's kind of in progress. Other than that, I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out right now. I'm trying to figure out if I want to try to even tackle something else for Model Fiesta coming up here in February, or if I just want to let that go and move at my own pace. But whichever way I go, I'm hoping I'll figure that out here in the next couple days, kind of leading up to Christmas and New Year's. But in the meantime, I'll leave y'all with another thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with all this bullshit. Have a wonderful end of 2022, and here's to 2023. Later.